Howdy howdy, my name is John, and this video is a review of the Dragonlance Chronicles by Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman. These three novels were published. The first novel was published in 1984, the second and third were published in 1985. These novels were tie-ins to pre-made Dungeons and Dragons adventures that were being created by the company that produced the core rules. This is the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons rules, which in today's terminology would be the second edition. If you're new to Dungeons and Dragons, these books are a great introduction into how the game is played. Since they were based off of the pre-made adventures, they give a good flow of how adventures go and how role-playing is done. These stories follow a group of friends who have reunited after a 5-year separation. At the time of their regathering, an army has invaded, and they must work to repel the invading forces. What these novels do well first is the world building. Since these are based off of Dungeons and Dragons adventure, a team of people actually took the time to make the world and make the history of the world. And as the story progresses, it does a good job explaining the history in the world. These three books take place over a good chunk of the world that these books are set in. Another thing that this novel really does well is character development. Obviously, if you've read these novels, you know I have to say the name Raistlin. Raistlin is one of the most fascinating characters in fantasy literature. I also really enjoyed following Tanis. Tanis is the leader of the group, and a good portion of the book discusses why Tanis is the leader. I'm going to read a short passage that doesn't count as a spoiler because even though this quote comes later in the book, it's referring to an event early in the book. Shall I tell you a story? A story of a man and woman, lost and alone and frightened. Bearing a great burden, they came to an inn. The woman sang a song. A blue crystal staff performed a miracle. A mob attacked them. One man stood up. One man took charge. One man, a stranger, said, "We'll go out through the kitchen." The one weakness of the book is the plot development. I first read these books in, I believe, the fall of 1991. Then I purchased these annotated editions somewhere in the early 2000s. And by then, while I was reading these, I remarked to a friend of mine that it was like reading it for the first time because I remembered very little of the plot. I then reread these novels at the beginning of this year, and again, I had the same problem. I'd forgotten much of the plot. And that's because the plot of these novels is largely forgettable. It's very generic. And here again, maybe that's because this is one of the first top fantasy adventures, although I doubt that's the problem. It's just the plot here is okay at best. It's not necessarily a good introduction to fantasy, unless you're new to Dungeons and Dragons as well. But given the characters that are in this novel, it's definitely a must-read once you're ready to start exploring the history of fantasy. One last thing I want to note is you do not want to read the annotated version of these novels until you've read the novels themselves first. The annotations do contain spoilers, so you want to avoid this edition until you've read the novels themselves. However, the annotations do provide a lot of behind-the-scenes information so that if you're interested in learning how to write, or you're just a nerd like me and you want to see the behind-the-scenes stuff, this annotated version is a great addition to your library. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.